Okay, so we're gonna start today's topic. Today we're talking about assignment of contract. I'm sure in your daily work, you probably heard of assignment of contract, but I don't know how many of you actually done assignment of contract because it's actually quite often your client may need an assignment contract. For example, if you do pre-sale or if you do development, land assembly, or even commercial, or even leasing, all those situations you will need assignment contract when your client cannot fulfill the contract. So on the paperwork part, it's an easy part. When you submit your offer, if you have assignment term in your contract, you will need a paperwork called notice to seller regarding assignment term. The buyer agent must provide notice to seller regarding assignment. This form along with your CPS and signed with your client and submitted with your offer together to the listing agent. And when your client is a assignee, they must obtain original agreement to confirm the sale when they're purchasing assignment. So which means if they want to buy assignment, they have to get the listing agent to send them the original CPS. And number three is assignee must have contact of the original listing agent to confirm the details of this CPS is a real existing CPS. So you are not got cheated, right? You didn't buy a fake contract. So the clause you have to include in your CPS if you want to assign your contract in the future is called assignment clause. This assignment clause you can find in your web form. So just search assignment and then you will see assignment clause. The assignment clause usually will say that the seller agree to let you assign this contract to any third party without further consent. And also it does not release the buyer from any liabilities from assigning this contract to a third party, which means even you assign this contract to a third party, if the third party assignee does not comply with the contract, the assignor, which is the contracts this person is selling the contract, you're still liable to complete the deal. So there is a risk that you have to be careful. And also on the CPS contract, you have to cross out term 20A, restriction on assignment of contract, either part A or part B. So normally it'll say the contract is not assigned, not allowed to be signed. So you have to cross it out. Another part is saying all profit you assign will become the seller's profit. You have to give to the seller. So sometimes you have to cross out that section as well. So if the seller does not care if you make money on assignment, so normally they will allow you to cross it out. But sometimes if they do not allow you to assign for profit, they only allow the buyer to assign to some third-party company which you own, right? And then they will allow you to cross part of it out. So be careful what your client need and make sure the contract is effective for your client. Next one would be GST. A lot of people don't know that there is a GST involved in the assignment. So assignment, there's GST on assignment amount. Assignment amount equals the deposit plus the lift, which is the profit you add on top of your deposit. Together, it forms assignment amount. So there's 5% GST when you sell this contract to third party. So if you have an assignment amount of 100,000, then just use the 100,000 times 5%. So when do you need assignment? For example, your client bought a pre-sale and they cannot get mortgage. So you have to get them to assign the contract to someone else who can buy and obtain a mortgage, right? So that's when you need assignment. Or a regular purchase assignment, like your client just lost the job, they cannot get mortgage anymore, and they just have to assign to someone else, right? Or your client is a tenant with a commercial lease, they also can assign their lease agreement to a third party. So after accept offer, where the buyer is not able to complete on the deal, you can assign with the seller's consent. Or the buyer is intended to make money on this deal, right? They know this is a good deal and they bought it and they didn't want to complete. They want to find another buyer who want to complete, so they can assign and add a profit on top what they paid. The timeline would be at least 2 weeks before the completion, because 2 weeks time is normally what the lawyers need to complete the paperwork. And also you have to get a mortgage ready before 2 weeks before the completion date. So here's a graph, right? The seller owns 100% and the seller sells to the buyer. So now the buyer is owning 100% of the contract. So if they were adding a name to the contract, it means the original buyer assigns 50% of the contract to buyer 2. If they want to change a name on the contract, it means the original buyer assigns 100% of the contract to the buyer 2. The buyer 2 is the assignee, and the original buyer is called assignor. So if you want to take a name off on a contract, sometimes you have mother and daughter bought a house, right? And there'll be 50-50 on a contract. And the mother say, hey, my name doesn't work on the contract for mortgage purpose. I'm going to assign my portion 50% to the father or to the uncle, whatever. And then it'll be a 50% transfer to buyer 2, who is the assignee. So here, let me change this one to assignee. Okay. So what you have to watch out for is assignment fee by developer. You have to look at the contract, how much developer is charging for pre-sale assignment. Sometimes it could be 1%, sometimes it could be 30% of your profit, or it could say at least 1%. So you have to really be careful what the contract says. And also, you have to get the seller's approval for the regular assignment deals, not pre-sale. Like if you are assigning a house, if you're assigning a commercial lot, if you're assigning anything that's not developer, you have to get the seller's approval unless on your contract says you do not need further consent from the seller. And also developer's handling fee. For pre-sale assignment, usually there's a developer's handling fee. You have to determine who's going to pay for this cost on your pre-sale contract, pre-sale assignment contract. Who will pay for assignment fee, developer's handling fee, and also you have to obtain developer's consent in order for you to complete this pre-sale assignment contract. It would be a letter from the developer saying, we agree for you to assign this one to a third party. And also there's GST on the assignment amount. So who's going to pay for the GST? If the seller is going to pay for the GST, then the seller has to include the GST in the assignment amount. So later on, they can pay the GST. But they can also say, the buyer, you have to pay GST for me. So there's like 5% of whatever the assignment amount, right? So there's GST on top. And also there's assignor responsibility. The assignor will not be released from the assignment. So in a case where the assignee, the buyer who bought the assignment, they could not complete, the assignor still on a hook. They still obligated to complete the deal. Okay, so watch out for that. So here are some basic knowledge about the assignment. I'm going to show you the contract, and we'll go over how to look at the contract and read about the contract. So here is a contract of assignment and purchase for new development for pre-sale deals. On the top is just regular brokerage address and phone number, and make sure you complete the date. The date is very important. This is called the contract date. And then on part 1, assignor is the seller of the contract. Assignee is the buyer of the contract. Developer name you can find on the original CPS agreement. Disclosure of statement. Disclosure of statement you have to get from the assignor, which is the seller. You have to fill in a date here. And there is disclosure statement provided by assignor, yes or no. If they don't have one, then you just check on no. There are maybe usually 4 or 5 amendments for a disclosure statement. So normally the developer would request the assignee, the buyer, to list all the date. For example, if there's 5 amendments, then you have to list all 5 dates on this section. You will not be able to type in here. You probably have to download the form and fill in either by hand or PDF editor on this section here. Normally, there is no protection contract in place for a deposit, but some developers do, so that you have to find out from the developer. But 80% of the time, you just check on no. Section 3 is contract to purchase. So you just fill in what is the date for the original agreement, amendment, and this one normally just leave it empty. And you have to read through the amendment if there's any updates, upgrades for your unit. Because for example, it'll take $3,000 to $5,000 for upgrade of additional island or additional parking or additional locker, right? You have to check yes or no if there's any additional upgrade, and then you have to put amount here. So the buyer who knows they have to pay extra amount on top of their completion price. So for here is the original price on the contract, and then how much is being paid for original agreement. And they have to provide you with deposit receipt to prove that they have paid this much amount. For any purchase on the assignment, the seller, which is assignor, must pay everything up to date. Otherwise, the developer is not going to allow you to assign. For example, developer asks you to pay 25% in total. If you only pay 10%, they will not allow you to assign. You have to pay everything in full, 25%, in order for you to assign this contract to a third party. And deposit held by usually is developer's lawyer. And is there any portion of the deposit secured by a bond? Usually no, just check on no. Interest on deposit. So this one normally is developer, just put developer here. Purchase and purchaser under contract. This is the buyer of the original agreement. So the buyer's name under the original agreement. Developer's name, okay. So interest on deposit occurring to, you can either choose the purchaser or the developer. 99% of time is developer, but I had experience where the developer put the interest under the purchaser. So at the end of the year, the developer usually will issue a T-slip to the buyer so they can, T5 or something, they can claim tax. Developer consent to assign is required. 99% of time, you circle yes. And consent to be obtained. This is kind of like subject removal date. So for example, you put a date here. Normally it takes about 30 days for developer to issue you the consent. So don't put 2 weeks, put minimum 1 month time for this date. The last part is developer's assignment fee. Assignment fee, you'll see on assignment term on original agreement. It'll say how much or a percentage, or sometimes free. I've seen free a lot of time when market is not good. So you just have to read original agreement to find out. Next page would be the property. The unit number, you can have the unit number and strata lot number. This is very important. Unit number could change during the development, okay? But strata number usually don't change. So you have to match these two numbers in order for you to have a proper transaction done. You don't have an address at the beginning. Most of the time, you don't have address. You just have unit number and strata lot number. Because development, they don't have actual address yet. PID legal description, you just leave it empty. Postcode, leave it empty. And then for here, it's pure math. Okay, this is pure math. So on the section here, you put whatever deposit you have already paid by the assignor. On the second one, B, is basically the profit, how much money you want to add on top of it. And C is A plus B. So A plus B, 1 plus 1 equals 2. So over here, it's asking you assignment amount. Okay, a lot of people, I see them have filled in wrong here, wrong number here. This is the assignment amount. And lastly, assignee's total purchase price, which is original price plus the part B, the profit. So if they bought for, let's say, $10, and then the section B is $1, so it's go $11 in total. Okay. For deposit, usually I would recommend you just put whatever the assignment amount is, just to save you from the hustle. Because normally you will pay the deposit upon subject removal, right? So you just pay everything, all the assignment amount on the subject removal when you have the consent from the developer. So terms and conditions. So this part normally is not big enough. You usually see, say, see attached addendum. This part is not enough because in your addendum, you will say who pays for GST, who pays for assignment fee, who pays for the handling fee, and what upgrades are there, and how much buyer has to pay extra on parking, locker, and stuff, details like that, okay? Assignment amount. This one, normally you can just leave it empty because on the next page, it'll say, here, release of assignment amount. Normally you put B here because section B is the easiest. Section B, it says assignment amount release on subject removal, which means after subject removal, the seller, the assignor, would get money right away when assignee obtain the consent from the developer. Okay, but you can also choose option A or option C. Option A says assignment amount release on submission of registration, which means a completion of the property. That's going to take another year or 2 years, very long time. Not many seller wants to choose this option unless they're very, very in a rush to sell. They would agree to option A, or they don't need money right away. And also there's a option C, option of assignment amount to be released, the portion of assignment amount to be released on subject removal and balance released on submission, which means a part, half, or 30%, or whatever you negotiated will be released to the seller, and portion of it will be released after the registration. So option A and option C are protection for the assignee, but for option B is best for assignor. Okay, so this one you have to see what option can you choose during the process. Okay, so there's a question, say, may I know if sold at loss? Sold at loss means you do not collect full amount of your deposit back. So you can do that because nowadays a lot of foreign investors, they could not complete on pre-sale deals. So they paid, for example, 100,000 on the deposit. But now if you pay them maybe 50% of what they already paid, they would let it go. Sometimes the assignor would only take back 10% or even 5% on what they have already paid on deposit, and they would let it go. So that's totally fine. Okay, so the next page is its template. And over here, your agent disclosure. Make sure you're the listing agent or the buyer agent. And offer date. This one, I don't have to say too much. Assignee, make sure you know the correct word. Assignee equals buyer. Assignor equals seller. And then on the last couple page here, page 7, it is the assignee's information. You will have to fill in everything for the developer to make another assignment of contract. And then the very last page, it has this part, developer signature. Normally before, developer would sign on this page, or smaller developers would sign on this page as a consent. But now bigger developers, they won't sign on this page, just leave it empty. The bigger developer, what they do now is they will have a separate agreement, which is also called assignment of contract, developer's version. So they will give you that, and you have to sign with your assignee and assignor. So just make sure how different developers will do things differently. Okay. Okay, so there's another question. If the margin is negative, should we put negative amount on the form? No, there won't be negative, because when your deposit is 0 and your assignment amount is 0, it'll be 0, right? It won't be negative. And also your purchase price, for example, would be still the same, right? So original price is $10 plus your profit B, which is 0, is still going to be $10. It won't be negative. And nobody's going to pay somebody to take over their assignment. Okay, so there's another contract of purchase and sale. This one's assignment for non-developer. So for non-developer, is basically the same, but it does not have the developer stuff on it, right? So on the section 2, you will see the contract information. And section 3 is the house address, lot address information. And section 4 is totally the same, right? Section 4, assignment amount, conditions, assignment amount. And here, option 4.6, you choose A, B, or C, when to release the assignment amount. Basically, this one's very, very simple. Just follow whatever's on the contract and it'll be done in few minutes. So this one is very simple. I don't have to say too much. You can have a look on your web form. Okay, so that is everything today for assignment. So if you have any question, you can turn up your microphone or type in the chat section so I can answer your question regarding assignment. Question, anyone? Also, make sure you remember to go in your daily email. There's a link for you to register for PDP point. Make sure you only register 6 times because the maximum you can register is only 6 PDP hours in 2 years. Okay, I don't see anyone have any question. That'll be all for today. If you have any question later on, feel free to call me on my cell phone. I'll be happy to help you. So if no more question, that'll be all for today. Thank you for attending. Have a good day.